Welcome back to another episode of It Tastes Like Burning, podcast that's strictly dedicated to nonsense and complete gutter trash talk. And we have no ideas that are our own or that we actually are willing to not sell. So with that said, let's go ahead and kick this critter off to the curb. Jesse, what'd you do this week?
I had a busy week between work and this place and doing everything I was doing. I feel like I slept 3 hours, but I know that's not true.
Excellent. Any grand plans for the coming week?
I may see myself in Michigan. I'm not sure yet.
Oh, I'll go up to the UP, eh? Be a Youper?
Yeah, I'm going to go get me a moose head there. Or,
It's a highly underrated lager.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. I don't know if it's underrated or it's just moose something. May come out of the other end of the moose.
All right. Well, what we're going to have today is a kind of bounce around a couple of different things. We are going to talk about the opportunity that just happens to fall into your lap. And you've got a problem trying to institute that opportunity into your organization. And then the other thing we'll talk about is conflicts in and out of the organization and perhaps a way to consider approaching that.
Yeah, because that stuff happens. It's there all the time. If you bury your head in the sand and do the ostrich routine, it's bound to bite you in the butt. Or you miss out on something that might have been truly awesome and you don't know because you just literally say we can't.
Yeah, you're not willing to put the legwork into even just the basic discussion. And part of the reason we're talking about this is that we're in this position where we've had a truly unique opportunity kind of arise for us. And one thing, kind of the final end game for our organization is figuring out the staffing equation while being volunteer and still maintaining volunteerism. And it looks like Jesse just got bit by a snake. What's going on over there?
Oh, that is nasty. Shout out to Rockstar Energy for making the most nasty, vile thing I've ever put in my mouth. Yeah, they can keep that.
What is it exactly?
I'm going to just say it's kind of like licking a cat's rear end crossed with an Easter egg.
Oh my God, that's sweet.
Yeah, it's horrible.
I'll pass.
Yeah,
if anyone's ever curious about what that experience was like, imagine taking bubble gum and rolling it on a storm sewer and putting it back in your mouth. That's kind of what that was like. So good luck to anyone who enjoys those energy drinks.
Oh, there's the problem. They misspell guano. It says guarana, but I think that's guano.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why it tastes so bad. It's
looks,
bat poop.
Looks like they added a T and an A to urine there.
Yeah.
That's turine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they...
Can't spell.
Terrible marketing.
Yeah.
Anyways, we have an opportunity come into our organization, and it's the kicker on it is that it's a new territory, new horizon, new concept, new ideology. It's new, and there's nothing quite like trying to introduce new into a fire department. I've found that that's actually a pretty significant challenge, trying to accomplish anything that's I've always found that progress always has a tendency to impede on tradition and history.
Yeah, and I'm always one of those guys that believes that we can still keep our tradition and our history, but we can still be forward-looking enough to realize where we do need to add new traditions and new history to the organization to keep it viable. And I think a lot of departments fall into that trap of, well, we can't do that, or our rules don't allow this and that. And what they forget to remember is they're literally the ones that write the rules.
Right.
Like the organization is self-governing in most cases, and the members of that organization are the ones that create those rules and those policies and steer the department in the direction it's going to go from now to the future. And if they're convinced that they can't change what they've done because that's the way we've always done it, that just doesn't generally work out. They've changed their tactics. They've changed all those other things through the years, and sometimes those were struggles to get those done. But they managed to figure out that, we just can't kill guys for the sake of killing some guys, and all those good things that don't happen as much anymore. And we can't just walk into a burning house without an air pack. They did that for years and years and years. Tend to be picky choosy on those traditions and which ones they actually want to hold up and those rules that they don't want to change. And I think most of it's out of fear.
Yeah, fear, and I mean, to a certain extent, it's a little bit of like, at least in my opinion, a little bit of a hierarchy / control thing. And it's not necessarily a power grab. It's just, if you maintain the status quo, that's comfort.
Yeah, because you know what's in that box. I've said that before.
Right. And I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges, and that's not something that's strictly unique to volunteer. That's universal in any organization, any place, any time. It's real hard to take a risk, much less a unknown risk that's uncharted, and be able to be adventuresome enough to step out and try and find a new horizon off of that. And that's kind of what I don't want to make it sound like it's that extreme for us. It's an extremely unique opportunity where currently our SOPs, or not our SOPs, our articles and bylaws don't allow for that change to happen. And the question is, should you change your articles, bylaws, constitution, whatever you have, or if you're under a board of directors, approach the board to request a rule change for this specific scenario? And again, I mean, it can be 50 different things. I've got 3 really unique things that are strictly unique to my organization that are really, really rare for volunteer departments to have. And this would just be a 4th one to be added to it. And luckily for me, when I became chief, one of the first things that I worked on was a significant upgrade to our SOPs and SOGs, because those desperately needed to be worked on. And they're big. That's not a 10-page document. Hell, we've got, I think, 35 different SOPs. And being that we're in Texas, we're going to have some SOPs on personal carry. We're also going to have just random other very commonplace SOPs, for establishing 2 in, 2 out, downed firefighters procedures, parking apparatus, on and on. But in our Constitution, or in our articles and bylaws, that was something else that I just recently was able to get the membership to agree on and change. And it's pretty set forth in stone on exactly how the procedures for joining the department are. And thankfully, the membership was very open to this idea. And we've started the process. Now, the kicker is that you can't start the process if you don't change the rules, because there's no reason to start the process if you haven't at least done the really hard part of changing the rules.
And by really hard, you mean a vote.
Right.
Basically.
Well, previously, our previous constitution and bylaws, you couldn't change anything. You had to have a full-out committee. They had to do a review, they had to present it, and then you could vote on it. So the fastest it could happen is 3 months.
Yeah, and we're at a point now where it can happen within a month, or
it can actually happen in the same business meeting if needed.
With a a larger majority. And I think it's fair to give a little background on what we're actually talking about here. So we're uniquely enough had an opportunity where a individual contacted us looking to become a member. This person definitely has prior experience, is very well qualified, wants to be a volunteer, has been a paid person prior to this, a paid firefighter, has lots of credentials and experience. And then in the midst of this conversation says, oh yeah, there's 10 more of us. But here's the problem. We all live out of your response district. And our rules say that you've got to live in our county or response district. And
that's kind of the kicker on this is that they're not even not only are they not close to our city or ETJ, they're not even in our county. And if you guys know anything about Texas counties, some of them are the size of other East Coast states. We have large counties. So for someone to not be in your county is at face value a problem.
So, if you're sitting there wondering, well, how in the world does somebody not living in your county benefit your department? Well, that's an easy answer. They come here and they stand by, basically, take shifts, do standby.
Yeah, that's the silver lining in this, and this is why it's worth pursuing, is that this actually gets us on track to maybe start establishing a shift-based schedule. And if we're able to accomplish a shift-based schedule, 100% volunteer, and be able to have more, that's the kicker. I'm not interested in a shift with one person. I'm not interested with a shift with 4. I can easily push more than 4 out of the station at any given time I want right now. So if I'm doing a shift, I want 2 trucks. That's what I'm after.
Yeah. And it's baby steps for all that stuff.
This is the first part of it, is that you have a individual. And that'll be the one thing that I'll add to all of this. Just a sidetrack. I'm not making a rule change and requesting a rule change based on an individual. That's dangerous. You don't change rules for individuals.
For one guy.
You don't do that. That is stupid, and that will get you in trouble. I am proposing and considering a rule change for an actual benefit to the organization that puts us in another step forward in the direction that I want to go. That you can sign me up for.
And I guess the bigger picture of this is not the first time that this individual, not this specific individual, but the person that we're talking about, that experienced guy that lives out of district, has contacted us about membership. We've had dozens upon dozens of them that we've turned away just in the last, 6-8 months that I know of. There's been a lot of them. And we've sent them to other places mostly. We helped them find somewhere closer to them or did what we could do. And I guess the real kicker is that most of those were just going through the phone book looking for somewhere to go. We got sought out on this last one, and the fact that we were sought out kind of made it hit home that, hey, if somebody's willing to put the time, effort to find us, to look for specifically us and how to get to our organization, then we should probably figure out how we can use those people to our benefit, number one, but accommodate those people in a way that they can be a benefit to our organization, and maybe quit funneling them off into other places.
Yeah, well, and we've talked about this ad nauseum the last week. So here we are. We've had several podcasts where we've sat here and mentioned, people are struggling. They need help. They want people. We've proposed some ideas. Here's some concept. Here's some things. discussions, and then you hang the help wanted sign outside. And you had someone respond. And now, even though you have the help wanted sign out, and in this particular case, not only did they seek you out, not only did they have the training, the background, the expertise, and they also, in this particular case, have gear, and you're still going to tell them no? What? You're going to have to explain yourself at that point to someone, whether it be the membership or your city council or your county commissioners. You literally are making this argument day in and day out. How do I get membership here? And not only do I have one, there's potentially more. And then it's like, no, we're not doing this. Or you can sit down and say, the golden goose literally just flew and hit me in the head. It fell in my lap, and now it's smiling at me.
And the egg hit my toe.
Yeah. And I can either figure out how to make this work, or at least start the discussion with the membership to make sure that the membership's not going to rise up and try and tar and feather you. But at least you have that basis point. And there is, and to people that are listening to this and shaking their heads and screaming, I get it. Okay? Here's the kicker. In the articles and bylaws that I had rewritten, we have two criteria. To be an active member, they have to live in the city or the ETJ, and to be a reserve member, they have to live in our county. And if they live in the city or ETJ and they meet the call requirements to be active, they're the ones that get to vote on everything. If you're a reserve member, you get an opinion, but you don't get to vote. So you're automatically marginalized off of that. Now, marginalized actually is a pretty aggressive word here, because what I really mean is that the department and the organization is protected from that case. You still have people from your local jurisdiction that are ultimately making the decisions to help run the organization.
Well, and the other side of that is it still lends itself to be an incentive to, if you're in a position where you're potentially going to be moving or something like that, to move in district, to move into the city limits or the ETJ, for the purpose of being an active member, because there's other benefits that come with that as well. You know, just being an active member carries a little more weight. There's a pension involved. There's some other stuff. So I ultimately see it as an incentive. So somebody could come in as that reserve person, and then say they're leasing a place and the lease is going to be up. They might decide, hey, I should move into town. You know, it doesn't work in every situation, because if somebody owns property or something like that, they're probably not going to sell and move for the sake of being an active member. But let's face it, a lot of our membership is younger people, and renting is the new buying. So there is the potential to move people around, or people to move for the opportunities that gives them.
Right. And to kind of double down on what you were talking about earlier about us being approached, I'm going to segue back into that. When I first got into being a volunteer firefighter, it was fun. It was awesome. I enjoyed it. And today I still enjoy it. It's awesome. It's fun. I enjoy the responsibility. I truly love the people that we're with and the departments around us. Because the world is screwed up right now, and it's hard to find good anywhere anymore. And what we do here is good. And the kicker is that once you get a volunteer that's been doing it for more than 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and even if they made a career out of it and they're still volunteering, that in itself speaks multitudes and volumes of the individual. because it comes down to one of my favorite quotes. The difference between commitment and involvement is like a ham and eggs breakfast. The chicken was involved and the pig was committed. And when you have people that move, they have a personal decision that they had to make, and they move, and it's still in them to go find a volunteer organization. I want to do this. And to turn them away just strictly because they're not exactly in your district, I can understand. You might be sending them to your neighbors. They live in your neighbor's district. You know they need help. That's who you're sending them to. But when they start approaching their nearest departments first, and they start getting turned down because they don't live in the area, it's non-negotiable, not up for debate, don't even apply. And they keep reaching out, and then they get frustrated. And then they finally ask someone, is there a volunteer department around here that has a half a brain? Do they have their crap together? Who can I go to? Who's actually taking people? And that's how we got this person. We were referenced by someone I don't even know from a major department that's a career firefighter. And they sent him to us. And that kind of goes back to that reputation and being that AAA baseball team, the farm league. And yes, I honestly, legitimately, when I was first told about this, thought it was a joke. Because it's too good to be true. Just everything's lined up too much. And I could care less if we get 5 or 50 people out of it. One is incredible. And to be able to sit there and kind of put all the puzzle pieces together and realize this guy's been doing it a long time. He wants to do it. He found you. At least entertain the discussion. Start there.
Yeah, because it's a totally different scenario when you're approaching the retired firefighter out of the city that just moves in down the street from you or whatever, and you notice it's got an IFF sticker on his vehicle, and you go have a conversation. That's a different scenario of you going out and looking for that guy than it is for that guy going to look for you. So it's a completely opposite end of the spectrum. And to be sought out like that and to not at least have the discussion, put it out there for the membership to choose their own destiny. If I was the city government, I would want to know why. Why did you guys not at least talk about this? Why do I not know about this? On and on and on. Because the reality is that I don't care what department you are, whether you volunteer, whatever, you need people. There's a need for people. Paid departments are paying sign-on bonuses at this moment in time to get people to come to work. There was so many people kicked out of the workforce throughout the last couple years due to lack of schooling not happening, basically all related to COVID, but the workforce of potential firefighters for career and volunteer, that number has gone down, mostly due to COVID, and it's time to start building that back up and figuring out how to grow our numbers to not just pre-COVID levels, because we're already past that. We're healthier now than we were in 2019 as far as numbers.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, we also realize that we ask a lot of people. There's percentage of people that are completely committed, like the old pig is, that what we're asking of them is more than you should ask of anyone, I would argue.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's easy.
In the time spent away from the family, the amount of training, all those things that we ask of them, and part of understanding that how you make it where you ask less of the hole as you increase the size of the hole, or you decrease the amount of calls and training and all that. Well, we have no control over the amount of calls. That's going to happen whether we're here or not. We're not fools, so we're not going to decrease the amount of training we do. If anything, you could argue always for more training. So that leaves you with make the pool bigger, add more people in it, put more fish in the pond.
Yeah. And then at that point, it just makes everyone's life easier. Even if you do have just one group and it's just one shift. Every third day you have a shift. That's every third day that your membership has an extra little bit of vacation time, because they know for a fact that you have that shift going and that they're not going to have to come up for control burns, for I can't poop, for fire alarms,
And
for
even
fender benders.
Yeah, and even if it's one day a week,
Right.
if on Mondays, I don't have to go to every little stinking thing that pops up, but I do need to go to the big things, that's a big weight off of somebody's shoulders. That's a free day.
And for us, it's weird how our call volume works. We always get a series of calls together, usually in groups of 3, and that makes it difficult for membership if you just set it up where if you're not available when those 3 calls hit, you're not available, and the odds of catching another set of 3 for that day is about 50-50. Because we're going to have them 3 calls. I don't know when, but they will happen. And when you go in and you actually start setting up shift-based stuff, it allows the membership to start missing calls, because there's not this crushing need of always having to be there for everything. And then the best part about that is that they start to get twitchy on the backside of that. And they're going to be the ones starting to schedule for events and calls. And then the best part of that is the people that truly have busy schedules, now they can actually cherry pick on the days they're available and dedicate time for call response.
Yeah, for sure, because that putting it on the calendar for you has some benefits. I mean, there's a lot of times where if I'm sitting at my house and I know that even though I live in the city, I know that it takes me X amount of time to make it to the station, and I look at the nature of the call and I'm picky-choosy about what I actually leave the house for, because I know that I'm going to miss the truck. If I'm going for call 2 or call 3. I'm not making that call that we got paged to most of the time. But in turn, I spend a lot of free time here. Even during the day, I'm lucky enough to own my own business. I can grab my computer and I can basically come office out of the station for the most part. And unless I have appointments that I got to meet, I can go on all the calls I want to go on.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of other departments that are remotely busy like us, I'm sure they have people that are doing the exact same thing. And I refuse to believe that that's just strictly unique to us. But it makes a big difference when you start having someone routinely hanging out at the station, because when other people are bored, they're like, oh,
somebody will be there.
I know someone's there. And then all of a sudden, you'd be shocked if you haven't experimented with this in your own departments, or God forbid if you have some draconian rule where you can't be at the station unless there's a call. I'd highly advise you to change that. Start having people hang out at the station. You will have a crowd at the station in no time. It's shocking. Weeks is all it takes. And you'll start having calls where you're having traditionally 2 or 3 people on an apparatus where you're now getting 4, 5, 6 per truck, and you're getting 3 trucks out. At least that's the case for us. We've had great success with it.
And realize that they're going to make a mess. They're going to break the recliner. All these things are going to happen, and it's part of it. And you're going to have to tell them every time you go there, clean up, mop the floor, sweep. Don't leave water bottles laying around.
Take the trash.
Take the trash out. You're going to that part of it's not, you can't get away from that part of it. I don't care how mature or disciplined or whatever. They're going to catch a call. They're all going to leave their water bottle on the table. They're going to come back to the station, park the truck, and they're all going to go home because it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and they're tired, and they're hot, or they're sweaty, or they just smell like ass. They're in rough shape. They want to go. And it's just a fact of life. Deal with it.
Yeah, and it's not the end of the world that you may have to clean up after them a little bit, or you may have to tell them to clean up after themselves a lot.
We'll segue just for a second here. This is going to sound absurd when I say this, but anytime that I ever clean the restroom in this station, I always make sure that people are here. And my guys, to their credit, will run up and try and take the old toilet brush out of my hand. And I tell them, that's not your job. This one's mine. Every time. That's my job. And where I'm going with this is if you don't have a chief that's willing to scrub a toilet, what the hell are you asking of your membership?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. A friend of mine, pretty successful businessman, had hundreds of employees, maybe 1,000. I don't know. I called him one day and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm cleaning the women's restroom." And I'm like, awesome. Awesome. I'm glad you're doing that. Because that just lets me know what kind of guy you are.
Yeah, it's really hard. The leading from front, it comes in many forms. It's not just grabbing a hose and kicking open the front door and Kung Fu Panda in the room, Kung Fu Panda rolling into the room and putting the fire out. There's a couple of other facets to it, at least in my very stupid, uninformed, and idiotic opinion.
I think that the leadership off scene and around the station and all that and doing things and being approachable, being willing to do actual physical work, those attributes off scene carry a lot of weight.
Sure.
I think the extreme other end of it is the tank to pump Frank guy, which I would argue you should never be that guy. The YouTube, I don't even know what department that is, don't have a clue, but the guy that's running around and he's the chief and he's dragging the hose and everybody else is just standing there watching this guy go bananas and put the fire out and throw bricks through windows and all the other crazy stuff that you've probably seen him do if you've watched any YouTube. That's not the chief to be. You know, the chief that will scrub the toilet, that'll get you the clout that you need to be the actual chief you're supposed to be on scene.
Yeah, I've seen both sides of it. There's one local chief that I have a mountain of respect for, and he's definitely a grab the nozzle, grab a rookie, take him inside, and go forth and do good work. But he also has a phenomenal foundation footing with his membership as a whole. And he's not a, grab a pike pole and spear someone kind of person. He's an educator is what he is. And he does a phenomenal job with it. And I would argue that department almost operates kind of like a beehive. And I don't mean that as an insult. I truly mean that in the sense that you have one person and everyone works around that one person. and that's their system, and it works really well. I mean, it works really well. They're incredibly effective and efficient on scene. They're doing good work, smart work. It's not stupid work. It's solid work. And I've seen the other side of that, where there is no leader, and that can be a complete wash sometimes. And usually, what ends up happening is that whoever the leader is that ends up showing up is the one that ends up taking it over.
Yeah. And my point with that guy is, I mean, all his guys are literally standing around watching him for the most part. And he's doing it all and they're watching. In a lot of those videos. And
I would argue that's that dinosaur attitude where you've kowtowed and beat everyone down so much they're scared to death to do anything because they don't want to have someone blow up on them.
And that was where I was going with that. That's exactly what I think it is. I mean, I think it's that you can't ever do anything right, so nothing is the only option. And man, that's a tough place to be. I've seen it. I've seen chiefs go down that path to where every single thing that was done was questioned, and it makes it hard to want to do anything, or it makes it impossible to do anything right. I mean, you could do everything perfect and there's still a chewing coming at you because you didn't do it perfect enough.
Yeah, or exactly how they wanted it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is. There's 50 different ways to lead. There's 50 different ways to be a manager. And then there's 50 different ways to take all of that, add it up, multiply it, and figure out how you want to implement it. And that's assuming that you even want to accomplish anything. Because there's a difference between being management and also leading. There is a difference between those two things. And just having your department in the holding pattern with no plans, no forward thought, and it's basic stuff. If your department's plan is to run calls, no, that's your job. That's not a plan. Where are you going? What are you doing? How are you maintaining? How are you growing? How are you progressing? What are you doing to address the problems that are physically within your organization?
Yeah.
And
1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years
Right.
from now, where are you going to be? What does the department look like in that time frame? And I think that's an important deal when we're talking about what we're going through right now. And we're literally talking about amending our rules to allow for a situation. How do you? Because I know the answer. I know that you don't know what's the right and when's the right time to do that and when's the wrong time to do that, because there's no way you don't have the crystal ball. So how do you make a good informed decision to explore something like that? When do you know when to approach it? When do you?
This will sound so stupid when I say this. I think it really comes down to the politics of it, because how good are you at convincing other people of an idea? Now, you may have the benefit of the entire membership thinking that it's a great idea. You may be the lone beacon of clear thought in the night on this particular subject. But if you can't sit there and have an open dialogue with your membership and figure out how to try and convince them to see your argument and the benefits that you've laid out, and then on top of that, also be receptive to criticism, because you do want to, if you're having a truly healthy discussion on a topic like this, you want people to come up with ideas that shoot this down, so that you find the holes in the plan.
Absolutely, and that's what I was going to come back around to, is like, we don't know, and we don't have the crystal ball of how this is going to work out, but at least we have the forethought to think of how it could fail, and we can either say, all right, this could cause it to fail, but there's nothing we could do about that. If that happens, it just fails and we move on, or we think ahead of it and we put policies in place that hedge our bet for success. And I don't think when you're doing something like this, whether it's a small change or a drastic change, or it's doing something that could fundamentally change the way your department operates, you've got to test bed this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, you can't just full bore tomorrow, this is what we're doing, we're completely going a different direction. You've got to test bed this stuff and see what works, what doesn't work. Because the reality is, I mean, you can be bamboozled. That's one of the things that could happen.
Yeah, delusions of grandeur.
Right. And just not see the forest for the trees. That could happen to you. It could happen to me. You could have a solid plan in place, and just the timing of it stinks.
Sure. Well, it's the old adage, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
And you could have the best plan on the face of the earth, best thought out, best laid out, best argued, and for whatever reason, 5,000 different factors, it didn't work. It just didn't work. Don't be afraid to cut your losses and move on and learn and continue to build and develop whatever your goal is with the experience learned, and make sure that you don't repeat the mistake.
Right. And the mistake may not have been the entire concept either.
Right. May have been just deployment.
Yeah. Could have been the nuances of what you were trying to do, and not the grand idea. The grand idea may be worth revisiting at a later time.
One thing that terrifies me about this, and it does, let's just be honest about it. Let's call it what it is. Volunteers and career don't get along that well. They really don't. And it's because both of them take a lot of pride in what they do. And no one likes to get their toes stepped on. And if you don't have the mindset and understanding that you're going to have a culture clash, because in this particular case, these individuals are from a different state and moved to our state. So you already got a different culture going on. And then from there, you're going to have different firehouse culture, and you're going to have different politics. And you're taking several things, and you're kind of, for lack of better words, mixing different types of explosive compounds. And the kicker on that is that if you don't have the membership interact with those people out of the gate, and kind of, for a lack of better words, get some neutral ground established pretty quick, and give your organization a place to work from. How are we approaching this? We're volunteer. We're bringing in a bunch of career guys as saviors? No. In our case, no. My stats are fantastic for being volunteer. I love our response stats, because I give them out to people and they just straight up call me a liar. And I just laugh. Because they're like, oh, you're lying. You're making it up. That's not possible. You can't do that. You're full of it. And I just sit there and I'm beside myself on it, because our run stats are that good as volunteer. They are. And I it's infuriating, but I have people routinely always calling me a liar on it. And in this particular case, these guys coming in are not saviors. They're not. So what's...
No, I would look at it in the opposite realm. We're the saviors.
Right.
Because we're the ones that are allowing them to continue to do what they like.
Right.
And we're the ones looking to give them the opportunity to continue to serve, whereas everyone else has said no.
Yeah, I'm approaching it from the position of kind of like an International Firefighters Academy. I look at it as a perfect opportunity to exchange ideas, concepts, tactics, stories. That's the common ground that I'm after.
Yeah. And if in the end it falls on its face, it falls on its face.
And we got called out to another call. So you're going to get another weird segue transition here. And literally this time, their dinner will taste like burning.
Yes.
That's what we went to. I think we pretty much hammered out that last discussion. I know we were getting close to our segue point anyways, so I'm just going to dive off into the next one.
Yeah, go ahead.
The last thing that we were talking about discussing was how do you handle, for lack of better words, conflict between your organization and another organization that's a fire department. And I think personally, the easiest way to handle this is, what does it matter what the organization says or does? It's literally not you.
Yeah, I mean, you can always be above board and above report and all that stuff, but ultimately, when somebody goes on the offensive against you through social media or some other avenue like that, there's just this overwhelming burden to do something about it.
Sure. Scuttlebutt at the station, rumors, whatever. And I think personally, from my point of view, the easiest way to handle it is to reinforce that no organization's perfect and that it's important to always find something to work on within your organization to make yourselves better. And by doing that, and by focusing internally on your organization and ignoring the scuttlebutt, it's in the long run, not only you're going to get the literal benefit of it, but you're also going to get the added benefit of knowing that what you're doing isn't participating in the gossip and the hearsay and the social media muck throwing, and what you're doing is just making your organization better, focusing your attention.
Yeah, and I don't think you cast stones. I don't think that's ever the right answer, to throw more rocks in this rock fight. But I think what you can do is you can shine a light more on the things you do right in that public space, and more or less you're just going to make yourself look better, make it harder for somebody to falsely criticize you.
Something you just said really does need to be focused on, and I think you're 100% right, is double down your efforts on highlighting the positive with your organization and doing even more to represent your organization in the positive light that you want to be represented in and just generally associated with.
In my experience in those public discourse deals, where, because it's truly out there and perception is reality, boy, your general public wants to support you no matter what. And for the most part, if your public supports you, and whether it's another fire organization, law enforcement, city council, whoever's coming after you, your citizens will come to your defense. That's been my experience in that, and they will flat stand for you for ever and a day.
Yeah, we've always been very lucky here. We've always had very staggering community support where it counts. I will always argue, up until very recently, we've needed to do more to have our PR and our positive image and public messaging. But in the support that we have had has been overwhelming and positive.
Yeah, and that's what goes so far in that deal. And the organization that's coming after you, usually it's never it's personal. It's not based on reality as much as it's based on some ill feelings or misconceptions or whatever that may be out there. usually if you're under attack like that, it's because it's a personal thing.
Yeah, and it's weird when you have to continually defend yourself from firefighters. It's like, what on earth is going on here? And like I said, to me, it's just a perfect opportunity to double down on your own organization. And spite's an incredible tool, and it's an incredible motivator if you're using it for the intent of benefit. And it doesn't have to be insults and derogatory and bullying. You can turn around and prove the excellence of your organization, and you can turn around and build your organization and have it adequately represented, and in the meantime gain allies in other places. And I know that sounds extreme to be saying it that way, but at the end of the day, mutual aid is king. And it is the, for lack of better words, the lifeblood of volunteerism. And your ability to have a really good, really solid working relationships with the agencies around you will go a really long ways.
Well, and it goes back into all aspects of the recruiting and retention and all that stuff that we talk about so often on here, and the importance of that. So if you have great people doing great things every day in your fire department, correct?
That'd be the most ideal scenario.
I mean, as a general rule, we have great people here doing great things every day. Do we constantly put them on a pedestal and show them to the world? No, we don't do that. But if we did a little more of that, and people were more in tune with that, to see that we do have great people doing great things on a daily basis, would that not make more people want to be a part of your organization?
Well, it's a pretty basic human condition, being around positive people versus being around negative people.
So we take the flip side of that with the negative people. If you're constantly berating your neighboring department, or you're constantly posting things that are derogatory towards them, do you think that people want to come be a part of your organization?
On a subconscious level, though. Yeah. But hey, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I have no clue.
Not either, but, I do kind of understand where I want to be and what I want to do, and I don't want to subject myself to be part of a rock throwing competition. That's not what I'm into.
Frankly, I don't have time for it.
Yeah, it's a waste of time, effort, and energy, and nobody wins. I mean, you can throw rocks at each other all day and nobody wins. Somebody gets a black eye.
I can think of old stories here in our area where you had neighboring departments that when I say hated each other, that is the understatement of the century. And they weren't just competitions. These guys hated each other. And it would go as far as literally screwing yourself just to make sure that other department didn't show up on scene. So you didn't mind working shorthanded. You didn't mind having enough water on scene. You didn't mind on and on, just because the relationship was so bad between the organizations. And here's my only question to all of that. What's your purpose as a fire department? It is to provide a service. And your job is to provide the most effective service that you can physically possibly provide at a timely manner, and ideally at the best cost-effective position to the taxpayers.
With the resources that are at your disposal.
Yeah. And when you have a position where, and these guys did, I mean, like I said, short of no, they did have fist fights in the 50s and 60s. They would. Yeah, they'd have a brawl over whatever back then. That's how bad the blood was. And I mean, it just makes no sense, particularly in today's environment. We're working too hard to try and provide at any capacity the services that we do. And it's just not realistic. So the question then, Jesse, is how do you handle, you can call it a competition that is too excessive. You can call it conflict. You can call it whatever. What would be your approach to handling it?
I mean, you kind of have two choices. You either go at it head first and you find the source of the problem and you basically confront it head on, man to man, let's say. You know, I'm not talking about a fist fight in the bays. I'm talking about, hey, what in the hell is your problem kind of conversation that might end in the fist fight. Who knows? Or you take that turn the other cheek, high road kind of mentality to it, and chances are, you know, the guys that are on the wrong side of the argument and they're doing things out of spite and malice, eventually that's probably going to catch up to them. I mean, it's not always, and so sometimes the nice guys finish last, but you know, if you're on the right side of something, whatever the situation is, the argument, the riff, if you're on the right side of it, chances are you're going to come out all right. It doesn't mean it's fun or it's not going to be taxing or cause you problems in life, because it's going to do all those things. But if you stay on the right side of it, you're going to come out all right. It just rarely goes the other way. I mean, I've been in situations where it was literally us versus a city council. Like, those guys have all the
cards.
All the cards. And because of public support and just being on the right side of the argument, things worked out. Didn't mean we didn't have to make a mess for a little bit. And, you know, the important thing that we did do through that whole time was we always did our job. Always did our job.
Yeah, the only kind of kink that I'll throw in this is that in, like, what you're discussing is, you know, a political thing between the city and the organization that's working directly with the city. And
right.
they got crossways.
Right.
Well, at the end of the day, both entities have to realize that they need each other.
Right.
Okay? Doesn't matter who's wrong in this. It's just sooner or later there's a compromise, there's a discussion, there's understanding. And in this particular scenario, when you have department versus department, there's arguably, and I'm not saying there's no bridge, but there's no mandatory path, because you have to ultimately go one direction when it's organization versus city or county, either or. There has to be a understanding eventually in that path. Whereas when you have two organizations that are completely independently funded of each other, there is no starting bridge to meet at.
Well, and yeah, there is, because ultimately, no matter who you are or any of that, you have the same goals. Ultimately your goal is to serve your public and provide fire protection. That's it. You have the same goals. You're the same thing. There's commonality there. It's egos and arrogance and just bad attitudes that cause 90% of the problem. And one of the ways for that to all get better is you simply just outlive them.
Right.
You know, you just outlive them. And in any organization that's going down that path, it's not unanimous in that organization that's going on an offensive attack against anything, whether it be another department, the city, the county, the whatever they're going on an offensive about. I promise you, the one that's on offense is not unanimous. The one on defense, they're unanimous 100% of the time, because that's just the nature of the beast.
Right.
So they're already crumbling from within themselves. I mean, that's their internal problems are manifesting as external problems at that point.
Right. Yeah, I truly believe that there is a commonality in this. And you have to find, it's not an understanding, it's not even a concession, but you have to be able to find a way to progress, because at the end of the day, I will still argue, what are we actually achieving here? And two, what's the actual service to the citizens? Because, and if we're talking about something that's, let's say it's life safety, you're not going to have two departments squaring off against each other in tactics. They're not going to have two departments squaring off against each other on, we'll just say water supply. What? No, it's not going to be related to the fire scene. And because if it was, it would just be one phone call to another chief and they would talk and they'd figure it out. It's not that big of a deal. The membership, frankly, is not too interested in having that fight, for a lack of better words.
No.
They're going to complain. They'll complain about the tactics, oh, look at what they did. Oh, look how they did this, on and on.
But they'll literally complain about what brand of bottled water you have.
Right.
So it's irrelevant.
Yeah. And the end of the day, the critical part of this is two things, in my opinion. One, being the adult and realizing that sooner or later, either a discussion's got to be had, or at least dialogue started. And the second part of that is, again, not trying to find a compromise or common ground, but it's just a simple understanding that trying to, you represent the same thing. By slashing your throat or trying to slash mine, it's inverse. You're doing the same thing to you.
Yeah, 100% of the time.
And it's not gonna, what are you trying to accomplish by doing it? Makes no sense. Makes 10 times more sense to try and work with each other.
Right, because what other option do you truly have at that point? I mean, you're not going to get your mutual aid from 40 miles away or 50 miles away and have them drive through your neighbor's district to come help you. That's not going to happen.
No.
It's asinine.
And for people that are listening that aren't on departments where you have a feud with someone, and to people that are on departments where you've had feuds in the past, this podcast will hit people differently, and it'll resonate completely different with the two people. The two people that have never had to deal with the two warring organizations. They're going to sit there and be like, what in the hell are they talking about? It's all about the community, and that's not our job, and it's just this, it's service, and you're not wrong. But you forgot about characters, personalities, dispositions, and basically just manly status. Yeah. And there's a certain point there where organizations aren't going to be able to just be kumbaya about it anymore, and they disagree. and that's just the way it is. Now, the levels of disagreement can be universal, but it can devolve into pretty serious matters. And I've heard about this issue in multiple jurisdictions, in multiple states. I've heard it between volunteer. I've heard it between paid. I've heard it between volunteer and paid.
Within the same organization, just station to station. I mean, that it happens, and it's usually as innocent as jumping somebody's call or something like that. It's when it kind of goes beyond that point that it really does become an issue.
Universally, what I've seen, where the theoretical red line, the line in the sand is at, is usually when it goes from, we'll call it a healthy competition or just solid disagreement, is when it becomes financial.
Yeah, for sure.
Finances, in my experience, are one of those things that truly it's a red line event. And, earlier in the podcast, we talked about that we're not going to armchair quarterback calls like on YouTube or anything like that because we just don't see a real value in it. I am not and never will profane to understand how to run another organization. Whatever their financial needs are is their financial needs. And it is their job to figure out how to go and obtain that.
And live within their means.
Right. And and you do see that. I've seen that from my personal experience. People challenge other organizations on purchases or requests, and it makes no sense. I don't know the organization. I could, more power to them. Figure it out.
But at the same time, if we're going into somebody else's response area and poaching donations, that's a problem. We shouldn't do that.
No, that's a thou shalt not. I think everyone would pretty much universally agree with that.
Yeah, that's our poaching members or any of that stuff. We shouldn't be poaching off of each other for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in direct reference to our organization, we have the luxury of being the big, well-funded organization in our county, and I have a problem with us taking funding that I know can be desperately needed and used at the organizations around us. And I personally would never have, let's just call it like a sliding scale based on call volume type funding system, because our call volume's so high compared to the departments around us that, it's 90-1.
But with that, we should also become more efficient.
Yeah.
This is economy of scale is what that is. And we have a responsibility to be more efficient at that point.
And you run into an unusual problem where you have one department that runs 300 calls a year, and then you have another department that runs 2,000. But we'll make up a simple number, and we'll say that both departments get $1,000 a year from whatever the local taxing entity is. Okay. Well, it's real simple to sit there and say that the department that's running damn near 7 times more the call volume should be getting 7 times the money. But here's my question. Is it a sliding scale when it comes to actual response? The department that's running 300 calls a year, are they a very rural department and they're having to drive, 20, 40 miles one way to go to this call? So just the wear and tear, maintenance, oil changes, tires, fuel is going to be so much higher. I mean, there's factors that should be considered in other organizations when they sit there and approach and say, hey, I need more money, and this is my idea on how to achieve that. I'm all for it.
But in this day and age, if you're struggling and you're hurting, there's opportunities out there financially, and what I'm speaking of, there's opportunities out there to fill those gaps and to make up that difference and fix those problems. There's grants, there's fundraising, there's so many vast ways to figure that out. But you've got to figure out what's your priority. If you're going to fix that problem, and it's not a one size fits all. Like, your problem may be different. You may have a different solution, but don't rope yourself into that point where you can't change course and figure it out. Like, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, do you change your rules to accommodate one person? No. But do you change your rules to accommodate something that helps your entire department and the longevity of it? Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know, if your way you've always raised in the past is not providing for your department the way you need to be funded now, maybe it's time to look at some other options.
And consider all the work that's going to go into all those options.
Right.
Because some of the options are excellent, like an ESD, and some of those options are basically acquiescing to defeat and saying that you need to go to paid.
Yeah.
Or a combination of that. Or it's we just need to have another fish fry.
Yeah. Or write some letters, or, you know, the possibilities are endless. I mean, in my mind, and I've been a volunteer for 20 plus years. I don't know how long. And in my mind, ultimately, being a volunteer trumps all. I've had plenty of opportunities to be that career guy. It was offered to me multiple times. I could have done it. I didn't want to do that because in my mind, in my rat brain, I enjoyed it too much to make it my job. I enjoyed it too much to make it my career. I wanted to keep the enjoyment of doing it and not turn it into what I had to do to make a living.
Right.
And, you know, that's not necessarily the same mentality everybody's going to have. Like, that's just how it worked in my rat brain. But it's worked out. I mean, I'm 20 something years into it. Have a pension that I'll get to draw one day. I, climbed the ladder. I've done lots of cool stuff, and I've been active in the firefighting community as more than just a volunteer firefighter at a station somewhere. I've served on boards. I've been at district level. I've done training that I've taught schools and area schools. I've got to experience a lot more by being active in that community than I ever would have been if I'd have went to some major city and tested and went to work.
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of comes down to those old standard ratios. 1 out of 10's here in 5 years, 1 out of 100's here in 10 years, and the people that make it that far, 10 years, 20, 50 years, they're at that point, them being a volunteer firefighters way beyond just being a volunteer firefighter.
No, it's ingrained into their person.
Right. It is like the definition of kind of the ultimate humanitarian. Even if they are a craggy old crusty turd, I can assure you that their care for the community is exponentially higher than someone that just joined.
Yeah. No, they eat, sleep, breathe. Everything they do revolves around, once they pass that 8, 10, 12-year mark, those people that are here, everything in their life revolves around the fire department.
Yeah.
They schedule vacations around it.
Right. Quick, simple question. Have you ever made a major life decision based around being a volunteer firefighter?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I'm in the exact same ballpark. I mean, major financial and life decisions based around being a volunteer. So for anyone new listening to this and kind of think back on our dinosaur conversation, those are the dinosaurs that you're talking to. You need to realize that this is who they are, and you're having a problem with either communication or just a generational gap where it's a communication problem. But you're people that have been doing this a long time. No matter how much you disagree with them, you might be surprised at how much you're exactly alike.
Yeah, they're the pig.
Yeah.
They're committed.
Definitely committed. Multiple times, every day.
And probably should be committed. But yeah, no, I made tons of decisions that were probably not the best financially, probably not the best for my family. And that's, some of that's kind of sad to say, but that's literally where you get in this field. And
well, if anyone hits back too hard on that, I'll just point out that people choose to be alcoholics too.
Yeah.
So, that sword cuts both ways. Everyone makes terrible decisions in their life. Some of them, at the end of the day, have fantastic impacts, and some of them don't. And they were still decisions made.
Yeah, and the reality is, you could miss your kid's birthday party because you were selling cars or whatever at your job that you normally have. I mean, that can happen. You could be out of town on business and get snowed in and miss those events that I've missed or any of that stuff. Or
get called to work for an emergency.
Yeah, it can happen to anybody. It tends to happen a little more regularly with us, and most of them figure it out eventually that you kind of got to put some balance into that.
Just to kind of bring the conversation back on center, what any other advice, tips, tricks for anyone out there that maybe has on an organization that's got some conflicts outside of the organization?
I mean, really and truly, you can't stoop to their level. And I know I just said be above board and turn the other cheek and all that, but you've got to not stoop to the level of escalating the situation. If the situation escalates and you were doing everything right, that's not your fault. But do not stoop to the level to escalate the situation. Don't go poking on the Facebook and go on the offensive on stuff. You just literally can't do that. Now, you can let your citizenry do that for you. That's perfectly fine. That's way out of your control. But realize that it's truly got to be the people that support you. It can't be because you went and asked them to do it. That's what I really drive home on that stuff. And whether it's one of those deals where you pull up there at the house at the same time, somebody's got to go stand to the side and let the hose line come off, because if you all go for it at the same moment, you're going to be wedged up in the front door, and the house is going to burn down around you because you all hit the door at the same moment.
Right.
You've got to kind of use a little common sense in this stuff.
Yeah, just it goes back to one of the conversations that we had here is, if you make the decision not based on personal preference, personal taste, but if you evaluate whatever from the position of whatever I do is going to be for the benefit of the organization. It's not my personal position. It is what is going to benefit the organization the most. That is what's going to, in my mind, be kind of the ultimate litmus test on this, is do whatever's going to benefit your organization the most. And having a confrontation generally is not going to be the solution. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be a lot of politics, doesn't mean there's not going to be lots of discussions and maybe even arguments. But at the end of the day, if your decisions and your work and everything that you're going forward with is fully under the intent of it's not personal, it is what is the actual true benefit for my organization, I have a sneaky feeling it's going to work out in your favor every time.
Yeah. And the extreme other end of that is if you let your ego and testosterone and anger make those decisions, ultimately you're going to end up putting people in harm's way. You're going to make a situation that's so unsafe through your aggression that you're going to end up getting somebody hurt or killed because you're going to drive too fast. You're going to be more aggressive in your tactics than what is safe. You're going to, make stupid decisions based on emotion that you probably don't want to live with.
Yeah, or best case scenario with what you're talking about is you're just going to get some pie on your face for the organization.
Yeah, at best.
And it's just going to suck because now you're pissed off, you're angry, you're infuriated, and you just had something kind of humiliating happen. And that's not awesome either. No one likes that.
Because I promise you, the guy that's in that frustrated, angered position, that's the guy that's going to, crash the engine into a light pole around in the corner, or that's the guy that's going to unload the 5-inch down the highway, or that's the guy that's going to do those things that are just going to make them look more foolish than what they do for being an ass. That can be you if you're not careful with it.
Oh, well, sure. A classic example of this, just road rage. You're driving down the road and someone just torques you off, and if you're in Texas, you're diving into your glove box and then you catch yourself and you're like, oh, nope, put the Smith & Wesson 500 away. Fact of the matter is that it was just a stop sign. In all seriousness, though, I mean, whatever, things set you off, and it is, everyone's reaction is to get angry, frustrated, callous, whatever, and take a half a second to just think about, again, what's this going to do for the organization?
Yeah.
And maybe for our younger guys that maybe are listening, and I'm not talking about just general complaining at the station. Do that. That's perfectly fine. But remember, people do feed off of energy. They feed off of body language. They feed off of constant pressure. And, it's a meaningless thing, and you're over there still just jabbing a stick at it 6 months later. Let it go. Move on. It's time to get past this.
And I will say, if you're that officer and you're captain, chief, battalion, whatever, and you're going into somebody's area that you're having that riff with, and it's truly not a safe environment, pull your people out and deal with the ramifications of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I truly think that if you got to that point, then whether you want to have it or not, I think a face-to-face needs to happen. Probably need to have some referees there.
Yeah.
Bring in someone that's middle ground, and not saying kill each other, but I'm saying you need to have this discussion. And there's nothing wrong in this scenario that we're making this. There's nothing wrong with having an emotional, heated discussion. Just get whatever beef is out. Get it out there. Get it off their chest and be done with it so you can start working towards something more positive for everyone.
Yeah. Because ultimately, I mean, that's a powder keg.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing to sit there and be hurling insults at each other It's another thing to be sitting there making fun of each other, or even harassing's the wrong word, but you're getting more boisterous in your vocal harassment. That's universal. If it's life safety or even close to interfering with your work on scene, I would say that you have, let's say it's not even life safety. Let's say it's starting to interfere with your scenes. Nope. Time to have the discussion.
Yep. Don't be the guy that overhand throws an axe at somebody.
Yeah. And on that visual, I think we should call it an evening.
I think so too.
Guys, we appreciate your time, energy, and effort. If you ever had thoughts, concerns, issues, comments, you can always shoot us an email at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. Appreciate it.
Good night.